The big names are here.
Have you got a favourite tool?
Got a favourite mallet? Let's talk about. I really like this one. So this mallet is made out of lignum vitae, which is sadly almost extinct now. But if you can get your hands on an antique crown green bowls ball, which is what this is, and you know a handy joiner who can turn it into a mallet, then I've got a bowls ball mallet made out of lignum vitae, which is a really dense, amazing wood for carving.
Would you mind showing me a bit of work then?
Yeah, let's do it. So I've got a piece of Lincoln stone here, and this is going to make a small roll for a piece that is damaged on the chapter house. I'm halfway through doing it at the moment, so I've just got a few chamfers left. We'll use our pitcher to remove as much stone as we can. Our Lincoln stone is really hard for limestone. It's very tempted to just smash through it, but that's when you can pluck the stone. We're doing it all by hand. It would be a lot quicker, obviously, if we were using things like grinders, but we don't use electric tools. We try and predominantly do everything by hand with mallets and hammers and chisels, because I think it's as important to preserve the craft as it is to preserve the building. I think the history of the craft is as important as the history of our built fabric.
And I mean, how much has changed in the hundreds of years that people have been stonemasons at Lincoln Cathedral?
Not a lot has changed. I'm pretty sure a medieval mason could walk in here and pick up a template and a mallet and just crack on.
Obviously, it's a gorgeous Gothic building and really dramatic and ornate, but the job is still construction. Are there a lot of women working as stonemasons?
There are a few of us, yeah. I know quite a few. The cathedral workshops do all talk to each other, so I know women stonemasons at York and Worcester, and quite a small, close-knit community of women stonemasons.
There's this photo on your windowsill from a newspaper clipping. Can you tell me about this woman?
Yeah, well, we have quite a few photos kicking around the workshop of ex-stonemasons, but this particular clipping is from the late 1970s, and it's of the first woman stonemason to be employed at Lincoln Cathedral, and it was big news back in the late 70s. And I was really shocked and really lucky recently that the woman in this picture, Hilary, actually reached out to me on Instagram and asked if she could come visit the workshop for the first time in decades. And she came to visit, and we all met her, and we were comparing how the workshop has changed over the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah, you come from this lineage of female stonemasons at Lincoln Cathedral.
It's really cool, because this is a photo that's been in our workshop for 40 years, and I think each woman who's worked here has been aware of this is the first woman stonemason, and then to meet her in real life was really exciting, and to hear her stories.
Does being a woman affect any of the work that you do? Does it affect how much you can do?
Absolutely not. No, it doesn't affect my work at all. We're all treated exactly the same. We're all here for the same thing, the same love of the job. So whether you are older or younger, or a man or a woman, it doesn't really come into it. We're all here to do the same job. And yeah, they're big, heavy stones. I mean, some of our stones that we're fixing on the building weigh over 200 kilos, but that's what lifting equipment's for.
Yeah, it's 2024.
Yeah.
Here's what we've got.
Exactly, yeah. You don't get any extra points for hurting yourself.
That was Lincoln Cathedral's heritage stonemason Rachel Ragg, otherwise known as the Ginger Mason on social media. I was just checking her out, and she was speaking to our reporter Martha O'Nuff. Love travelling up the cathedral walls, so to speak. Thanks for getting in touch with your stories. Here's one. My husband and I have just celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary. We're going to New Zealand to travel around for a few months in a motorhome. Our grown-up children are talking of tracking us to make sure we don't disappear. Thanks for affirming our crazy choice. Siobhan, our first listener for Listener Week. From Mal and Mike, the geriatric nomads, as they call themselves. I want to turn on to another topic suggested by a listener. This is surrogacy. It was Helen that suggested it. In the UK, the numbers of children that are born through surrogacy is still pretty small, but they are expected to rise, not just because of infertility, which may impact heterosexual couples, but also more gay male couples. Also, single men are looking to have their own children that are biological, and some surrogacy, as you will know, is extremely contentious. For others, however, they see it as life-changing. So surrogacy is legal in the UK, although it's an offence if you advertise that you are seeking a surrogate or are a potential surrogate looking for, as they call them, intended parents. So people to also an offence to arrange or negotiate a surrogacy arrangement as a commercial enterprise. There are a number of non-profit organisations that lawfully assist couples and their surrogates through a process known as altruistic surrogacy. And we're going to get into that in a moment. It was Helen, our listener, who got in touch with her story. She's with us now. Helen Trenchard, mother to surrogate baby boy Robin. Welcome, Helen.
Hi, welcome. Hi.
And we also have Rena Mears-Pye, who carried Robin for you, Helen. That was Rena's second surrogacy. She's also an egg donor, but not for you, Helen, as I understand it. So you're both very welcome to Woman's Hour. Maybe I'll start with you, Rena, however, just to explain that term altruistic surrogacy. How would you describe it and how is it different from commercial surrogacy?
So in the UK, surrogacy is altruistic, so that means that the surrogates that I've met while I've been, part of the organisation for the last 6 years, the surrogates that I've met, it's altruistic because there is no financial gain from surrogacy. We do this because we want to, we do this because we can, and we build up such wonderful relationships and bonds with the people that we help. And I just feel so proud and lucky that I've got involved in this organisation, and all centred around altruistic surrogacy. So surrogacy through love and friendship, really.
And the organisation you're talking about is Surrogacy UK. You are a trustee of that organisation, but you're speaking to us today in a personal capacity. But let me turn to you, Helen. Was it a leap to try surrogacy, to go on that?
Yeah, it really was. We took a very deep breath, my husband Dan and I, before we started to look at surrogacy. We'd been on a 7-year journey up to that point, and IVF was no longer an option for us. And it was the thing, trying to have a family was the thing that we had tried hardest and longest for, and I'd had 5 operations in that journey. There had been a lot of pain and disappointment. And when the doctor suggested that surrogacy now was our only route to carry the remaining embryos, it felt like a failure. It felt like the most devastating news that we'd ever received. And we took a really big, long pause, and we took time away from work, both of us, to really understand how much strength we had for the journey ahead, and whether maybe we would be childless, maybe we would look at adoption. But through the surrogacy organisation you mentioned, meeting people, meeting ordinary couples and ordinary women like me, it made me feel like, this could be possible. And I suppose the biggest leap for me was just letting go of the idea that I would carry my child, and actually letting go of the shame I had around infertility. To be, out in the world and ready to kind of mingle with potential surrogates, you need to put the shame aside. And meeting other people like me really helped. So I contacted Women's Hour because I wanted to provide hope for women like me who are post-IVF, or maybe IVF isn't an option for.
You met with Rena. You seem to have trust and friendship now as this key element in your surrogacy story. You're both friends now, continuing, for example, for Rena to see Robin, for example. But do you think you can have or use a surrogate, if that is the correct term, without an intimate relationship?
I personally can't imagine that. I don't think my husband and I would want to enter into a commercial surrogacy situation, maybe overseas.
Well, not even commercial, even if it's altruistic, because I'm just thinking, and Rena, maybe you want to come in on this as well, it's such a particular relationship that's built on trust. To be able to find that person that you can trust with a potential child and your future in that way, it's such a huge thing. I mean, did you just know when you met Rena? How was it?
When I met Rena, I have to say, Rena and her family are so full of life, so welcoming, so enthusiastic, so knowledgeable about surrogacy, and so bloody normal. Sorry, Ren, but you're really normal. And I have to say that it was, it's always a good idea to have a really extended get-to-know period to make sure that your families gel and you're the right people for each other. So Rena and I are 2 members of
doing it. I mean, Rena was ultimately carrying the most precious thing that we had, our embryo.
And also, I think the biggest thing, I think the biggest thing as well is the thing that we don't ever want to forget about is the child that's born through surrogacy. And so, if you didn't have that friendship, I just think it's so important that children that are born through surrogacy are aware of, how they came into the world, and be able to know the person that carried them. And I think we can't lose sight of that. Whereas all friendships are different. You don't have to be in each other's pockets. You don't have to meet up every single weekend. But I just think it's really important that there is that friendship there, and it's going to get you through the really tough times.
And speaking of surrogacy, our listeners may be aware that France, Germany, Italy and Sweden ban both altruistic and commercial surrogacy. Others, like Greece and the UK, allow the practice as long as it's not commercial. Others have adopted either very limited legislation or none on the topic. I'd be wondering, Rena, what you would say to those who might think that women using their bodies in this way under any circumstance is wrong.
Well, I'm always really keen to educate, and always really keen to give my opinion that people are going to have their opinions, and they're going to feel a certain way about surrogacy. But what I would say is that I'm a great believer that I am choosing what I want to do with my body. Nobody is coercing me. Nobody's trying to get me to become a surrogate. It's completely free will. And this is something that I choose to do, and has had such a positive and it's such a massive impact on mine and my family's life, and has taught us so much about what it means to be kind, and what it means to have a really deep friendship and an understanding, and being able to communicate. Just so important.
I'm going to leave it there, and I should let people know that the surrogacy agreements in the UK are unenforceable, meaning that the surrogate is the legal mother, and after the child is born must consent to surrendering her parenthood, which is then a legal process that happens through a parental order. But really interesting stuff. I want to thank you both so much, Helen and Rena, for coming on and speaking about it. And I want to let you know that tomorrow, listener, we're going to speak about some various things. But one thing I really want to get into is tummies. Join me tomorrow at 10.
Women's Hour was presented by Nuala McGovern and produced by Emma Pierce.
BBC iPlayer.
We are not in control of this situation.
We know that these shootings are very upsetting for the community.
It's a gathering storm, and I'm worried about anyone who's at the centre of it.
There will be consequences.
And this cultural code of not grassing, we are way beyond that now.
They're all turning on each other. This ends before it begins. Revenge runs in the family. I go down, you go down.
Blood for blood.
Put them down.
We've been in danger before.
But this is different, Rory. Look at me. This is different.
Sherwood, Series 2.
It's on a knife edge out there.
Starts Sunday on BBC iPlayer.
BBC News at 11 o'clock. One person is dead and 6 people are missing after a luxury sailboat sank off the coast of Sicily. At least 4 of them are believed to be British nationals. The 56-metre yacht, which was flying a British flag, was hit by a violent storm off the coast of Palermo at sunrise. Emergency services rescued 15 of the 22 people on board. The Italian Coast Guard says a wreck was identified underwater, where a body was found. The American Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, has said now may be the last opportunity to secure a ceasefire and hostage return deal between Israel and Hamas. He's been meeting Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, with the aim of adding momentum to recent mediation in Qatar. The White House has put forward an optimistic view of those talks, but our State Department correspondent Tom Bateman says that view isn't widely shared.
My feeling is that Mr. Netanyahu is digging in. There was another defiant statement last night where he said that the Israelis will insist on maintaining a presence in the south of the Gaza Strip. That's something that Hamas says they simply will not accept. They accuse Mr. Netanyahu of inserting that as a new clause, and in their view, they see it as continued occupation, effectively a continuation of the war.
President Zelensky has said the aim of Ukraine's incursion into Russia's Kursk region is to create a buffer zone. This morning, Russia said that Ukraine had struck and damaged a 3rd strategic bridge yesterday. The government has activated emergency measures in the face of increased pressure on the prison system from the number of arrests and jail sentences since the recent riots in England. Police cells will be used for defendants in the north of England until there is prison space. The same measures were used to ease overcrowding in prisons by the Conservative government in May. The Ulster Unionist Party leader, Doug Beattie, has announced he's standing down from the role. He cited irreconcilable differences with party officers among his reasons. BBC News.
We have a new book of the week beginning later this hour on Radio 4. Sammy Wright, a teacher with 20 years' experience, has interviewed hundreds of his fellow teachers, education experts, and indeed pupils to ask if our focus on exam grades is too narrow, and whether there are other ways we could be preparing young people for life beyond the school gates. We'll have the first instalment of Exam Nation at 11:45. But now on Radio 4, Michael Sheen is waiting patiently to take to the stage.
So I was sitting in the dressing room before I go on stage. I have all the brain stuff going on. Like every performance, it's like, this is the one that's going to change the world. This is the one.
Tonight.
And then the pressure, nerves. And then it'll be, oh God, I'm feeling a bit tired. I'm not going to be able to give a fuck. I'm too tired. Or, I need to pee. Or, you know. Or,
I should have had a pee.
and then I get on stage and all of that drops away.
Michael Sheen gets into character. Part 2. From system to method.
It drops away. As soon as I step on stage, I'm immersed in the world of my character. That's what keeps nerves at bay. I have tasks to perform, a role to play. The great Russian actor and director Konstantin Stanislavski came up with a series of questions to help actors with that kind of immersion. They should approach the character, he said, within what he called the given circumstances of the play, and asked, who am I? Where am I? What do I want? When do I want it? Why do I want it? How will I get it? In the early 1920s, Stanislavski's theatre company, the Moscow Art Theatre, escaped political turmoil in the Soviet Union by going on the road. They toured Europe to great acclaim and, in 1923, made their way to New York City.
It is very difficult to oversell what an impact this had.
Isaac Butler has researched and written about the ways that Stanislavski's ideas reverberated through the 20th century.
It was like the Beatles on Ed Sullivan every night. You know, the first night that the Moscow Art Theatre performed in New York, they got a 30-minute standing ovation. 30 minutes. Everyone who was into culture wanted to know the secrets of why the Moscow Art Theatre was so great. Why does even the smallest spear carrier give a performance that's as good as the guy playing the lead?
And the secret was Stanislavski's system. Over the previous 20 years, he'd been formulating and refining a technique for training actors, a way of developing their craft and creating authentic characters. And his system, as it was called, was at the heart of what made the Moscow Art Theatre so extraordinary. A theatre company can travel, and their ideas travel with them, but not always in predictable ways. In the audience were a disparate cluster of writers, actors, and directors who would adopt and transform Stanislavski's system and go on to change film and theatre acting for good. Initially through a theatre company, a sort of New York recreation of the Moscow Art Theatre called The Group.
They want to create a more artistically serious, more socially relevant, more personal, American specifically theater. This is the early 1930s. They were ideal.